Hello, everyone across Oregon and Southwest Washington. My name is Maier, Rebar, and I'm a Care Services Coordinator in the Willamette Valley for the ALS Association of Oregon and Southwest Washington chapter. I have with me today Joyce Maier, and she is a past caregiver and loving wife to her husband, Paul. We'll meet Joyce in just a moment. This is an installment in our live Facebook educational series. We are hosting chats with a variety of individuals from across Oregon, and the purpose is sharing information and strategies for people living with ALS. We invite viewers to use that chat bar to ask questions of the presenters or comments on Facebook. You're actually muted, so that's how we get your questions. Or if you're viewing on our website, you are welcome to email questions to info@alsoregon.org. ALS Oregon is all one word. If we don't have time to get to your questions live, we will follow up by email after this event today. We will also be recording this event, this live stream, and it will be a link on our YouTube page under videos, and that will be available shortly. First off, welcome to Joyce Maier. I'd like to say we first met in 2018 when your husband, Paul, was diagnosed with ALS. Could you please share a little bit about your family?
Sure. My husband and I live in Philomath. We've been married 42 years in December. We have three children, three grown children. They're all in their 30s, Morgan, Ashley, and Nicholas. And along with that comes a couple of grandchildren too, which is really an amazing thing to help through all this. It brought a lot of joy to Paul in his during his illness.
Great. So the ALS Association, we recognize that ALS affects the whole family and the caregivers need support too. The ALS Association nationally has designed a program called the Care Connections, and that has a video and resources to supplement the conversation today. We will have that information for you. And we'll have those in our chat box. So many times people living with ALS or their caregivers or spouses are asked questions like, how can I help? Or can you keep me up to date? Or what can I do? Those statements can sometimes feel overwhelming. So through the video with Care Connections and the websites we're talking about today, you're going to be able to learn a little bit more how to make this journey work with the platforms that are available to you. So, Joyce, you used a program called Caring Bridge.
Yes.
Who set that program up?
I did. It's an online program that is for people sharing information about usually an illness or some sort of problems in the family so that people can be notified without having, us having to make phone calls and email, things like that.
And tell me about setting that up. How long did it take you to set up? Was it done on a computer or iPad?
I did it on just a laptop that I have. I went to caringbridge. I think is it .org or .com? Caringbridge, it's all one word. And it probably only took me a couple of minutes to set up. You just needed to put some information about yourself and your loved one who you're writing about. And it probably really it was less than 10 minutes that it took to set up. It's very easy to get to and very intuitive. But I think the only thing that took maybe a little bit longer was that I wrote a couple of paragraphs about Paul and our family and about his disease. And so it was sort of an introduction to this is who we are. However, the people that read it were mostly people that knew us anyway.
So you personalized that page to make it work for you.
And you can add photographs too all along the way, which is lovely.
Oh, so you can, one of the reasons I like this program, so there are two that are available that are blogs along with calendars. One is called Lots of Helping Hands. It's not lots of, it's lots of with an SA, lots of helping hands in the others bridge. And you will see those going up in the chat box. Both of those have the ability to do a blog that you can put information into. People then can go into Caring Bridge, enter their email, and when you put a new blog post up, it sends it out to the people in your inbox or your blog box.
I think it sends a link to click on, so it takes you right into Caring Bridge. The actual blog doesn't appear in your email with Caring
Right.
Bridge.
Good. Thank you. That was a really good point. Yes. I like that because for safety reasons, if people are traveling, we don't want to have that information up on Facebook. Hey, we're out of the house, we're traveling. This is a way that you can invite the people you would like to learn more about your family's journey with ALS.
And one thing too, when you set up your own personal page, you can call it whatever you want. So I actually used my husband's name as opposed to, something that was more original, but it's the way that you can tell people, oh, all you have to do is go to Caring Bridge and you just search for the name. So if his name was Big Daddy or something like that, you could just type in Big Daddy and it would send you to his particular page. And then you got the notifications every time we updated it.
Did you use any other features on Caring Bridge?
It has a calendar, and the one thing, as a caregiver that I'm sure a lot of you know about this is people are always asking to help. And sometimes it's just really difficult to come up with something that can be really helpful. But the one thing I took advantage of was lawn mowing. That's always something someone did, and I just don't want to. And so that was one thing that people can do without a lot of instruction, and they felt like they were actually helping out. And I set up a calendar page for like mowing the lawn once a week. And so people could go in and type their name in saying, I'm going to come mow your lawn on Saturday. Well, it wasn't very successful. A couple of people signed up, but I think I just didn't push it enough. I think I might have said it once in one blog, and it just basically came down to people. I just had text messaging connections for that kind of a thing. So other people might do better than I did, but it just didn't really seem worth it to me. That piece of it wasn't great for our purpose specifically. And I didn't have anybody coming into the home to help at that time. And so that was really kind of the only thing I could do was the lawn mowing.
I've seen other families be successful by using that for maybe a meal to come in on the evening that they come back from a clinic or doctor's appointments, or if a spouse has many things happening and is juggling a lot of balls on one day. That's a great place where you can put up food requests. Another family who was very musical, they had kind of house concerts is what I would call them, where people would come over. They'd put up that, Thursday night would be the time to bring your instrument and come on over and musically jam with folks. So there are a lot of creative ways, not just, I like to say there's a lot of social ways you can use a calendar, and there's a lot of ways that you can also use the calendar to receive support, whether that's meals, chores, helping around the house.
That would have been a great idea because we're kind of a party family, so I didn't do it that way, but good idea.
Yes, there's great. I'll just let people know you do have something you call the party barn. So it's a beautiful barn on their property that they host a family and friends gathering at. Just a lovely piece of property there. With the calendar too, it can be expanded in different ways. I've seen folks do things such as having folks friend come over and read, or someone who is really into, I know, some kind of CBs or, I'm sorry, I can't think of it, radio, be able to have a friend come over and do that kind of work with them, or do quilting with somebody. There's so many ways you can use that calendar to support not only the person living with ALS, but that caregiver. Maybe your family does not need hands-on caregiving. You just need someone in the house while the caregiver runs into town to do shopping. And serving rural areas, to go shopping in Philomath, you really need to go all the way into Corvallis. So you're going to be needing at least 40 minutes just in driving time there, and then the shopping time on top of it. So kind of incorporating friends to hang out, watch a movie, watch a ball game, whatever it is, so that the caregiver can safely get out of the house. Okay. When Paul finished his ALS clinic days, did you use CaringBridge to update folks within your family or circle of friends?
Yes, initially, my husband, I was very lucky in that he was very willing to share his story and his feelings, and he writes much more eloquently, not eloquently, but more specifically than he actually will speak to. He was somewhat of a quiet man. And so he would write these long emails to his family and, you know, some of our close friends. At the end of every clinic, he would just send out an email to a bunch of people. And finally, I just said, you know, why don't we set up a CaringBridge page? We had used one for his mother when she was going through cancer. And it was really great then, because over a period, I think we probably had CaringBridge not quite close to a year. He passed away in this past January, and he was actually only diagnosed with ALS a year and a half before he died. But what happened then is we set up this CaringBridge, and then friends of friends of friends, you know, people you wouldn't necessarily be in contact with, but still loved you and had connections, whether it was from church or whatever, would be able to go in and read these things. And people felt like, they told us along the journey that they felt like they were experiencing what it was like to have ALS with us, because he was very descriptive, and he would talk about the hard things, and he would talk about the fun things, and he would talk about the grandkids. And it was also, as his speech got worse and worse, he could type much better, even though his hands were it was becoming harder for him at the end. He could type these letters better than he could speak them. And it was wonderful. It turned out that we had over 2,000 hits, if you want to call it, over less than a year. I mean, a lot of people were reading it. And another really wonderful thing is that people can comment back to you about it. They can, you know, send their well wishes or whatever, because I think people are sort of afraid to bother you if they don't have constant sort of contact with you anyway. And so people that was like our children's Sunday school teacher, for example, you know, would say, "Oh, I've been praying for you, Paul," and you know, they would send their greetings along to us, and just notes of encouragement. And while I think I probably read most of the comments more than Paul did, I read them to him now and then. A lot of times he'd say, "Oh, let's do that later." But for me as a caregiver, it was a really special thing, just knowing that there were so many people out there that were journeying along with us. Because you can't, in just meeting someone at church or at the store for a few minutes, you just can't sum up what's going on. And again, I was really blessed that Paul was willing to share his story, because that made it a lot easier for me. It was just a great tool. I actually also, when he died in January, and we had a memorial service for him, a celebration of life in February, and it was a great way to pass on information at that time. He did most of the writing, but at the end I wrote a blog, and then my son and daughter both kind of came in and entered some things and talked about what we were going to do at a celebration of life, and how you can help, and all these ways of just being in touch with people, because of course they didn't want to bother you at the time. So it was great. And I just recently took it down. I figured it's been not quite 5 months, I guess. But it was like time, because nothing further was going to go on that. But it was a wonderful, wonderful deal. And another thing too, we did as much sort of traveling as we could last year, which was mostly just some road trips. And, you know, we documented some things along the way too, because I think it was important for people to know that, you know, we were out and doing what we could when we could, you know, and September was the last time we did anything out and about. And it was really a nice time to be able to share those pieces with people too. So it felt very unencumbered. And I felt like we could really share our life with our sweet family and friends.
Right. Well, I want to just point out that Caring Bridge and Lots of Helping Hands are a no-cost site. They do, of course, ask for donations because I believe they're nonprofits. The nice thing is the information is safe and confidential, and it's just a tool. If a caregiver or a person living with ALS is feeling overwhelmed with people, example would be a large family coming back from clinic and having to give updates to a lot of people, this is a great way to get the information out quickly and easily. You mentioned, go
Can I
ahead.
add one thing?
Yes.
Were going to say this, I'm not sure, but what was nice about it is that Caring Bridge didn't like inundate me with emails. I mean, they never sent me anything. They never asked for money. There is a spot when people go on to read your blog saying, hey, you can donate to Caring Bridge, but there's no pressure. It was really exactly what it was meant to be. It wasn't like you got into something that you wished you hadn't been, you know, because they were bothering you. They didn't do that at all. It was a lovely, lovely tool.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. One of the things that I liked that you guys did is on your travels in September, you placed kind of photos up there on your blog spot of seeing family throughout the California area. You have a cute little story that you shared about a young girl.
Are you wanting me to share that now?
Could you please?
So we were visiting my nephew, who's a commander in the Navy, and he has a 2-year-old daughter. Her name is Finley. And Paul had a feeding tube for quite some time. And so, of course, you know, we had to do that often during the day. And we were hooking them all up. We were just in their living room. And Finley comes over. I have this really adorable picture. She comes over and just takes her hand and pats Paul's arm while I'm doing this and just goes, I'm here. It's okay. I'm here. Just the sweet little, oh my gosh. And we happened to catch a picture at that moment of that, just that adorable thing. Her mom is a nurse, and I think you know, she has a lot of caring and empathy. So it was pretty sweet.
That's so lovely. Just what a great way Paul also shared his gift of, you know, letting her be part of this process too. Did you find any advantages or disadvantages with Caring Bridge?
I don't think there's anything I can say negative about it. Not one thing.
Right.
I would highly, highly recommend it. It's a wonderful tool if you're willing to share with people.
And please know on the ALS Association website, there should be a link in the chat box. There is a video which you can watch. There's, you know, a web page and then a video you can watch that'll give you just some helpful hints on how to get things started. It gives people the idea of how it can be used. I've also seen Lots of Helping Hands or the Care Connection be done for families who have young children at home and a parent with ALS, where they've put in their social events for their kids or rides to and from practice or different things. Any parent knows putting on a birthday party for kids can be just a really busy time if they're working full time. Now, if you add ALS into that, it can be very difficult to be able to do it. I had one group who was using the Care Connections, and they just had a team of 3 who put on a birthday party for a 12-year-old tween. And I thought that was a great use of that program. Is, you know, we all have friends who are Martha Stewart, and hey, hand it off to them to make a great birthday event for that family. I saw another friend who said that they didn't know what they could do, but this person was really good at baking. So once a week, she asked if she could have a slot where she could drop off some baked goods to the family. So there are a lot of ways people can be creative and support a family that aren't always so obvious. And, you know, we all have seen meal trains for new babies and signed up for taking meals to different people. This is just an expanded way, and it's a tool. Could be used for so many different ways, different hobbies, any ways to connect the community together. Do you have any helpful things that you've learned through the process of using Caring Bridge?
I wasn't nearly as creative as the things that you talked about. I should have been, because I tend to be kind of that person, but I really can't think of anything to add other than
okay. Well, I wanted to also highlight one thing that I saw that you've done with your grandchildren during this COVID-19 lockdown period is how you have been creative with your grandkids and being able to connect with them. Could you tell us a little bit about your grandkids and how you've connected with them over Zoom during this time?
Sure. I tend to be, I'm actually sitting in my craft room right now. I tend to really love to do crafts. I'd rather do that than cook dinner. And the kids, they're Frankie's 4 and Jimmy is 3. My 2 daughters had babies 8 months apart. And so these 2 were like best friends. It's lovely. And they don't live very far from me. We're only 5 and 8 minutes away from each other. But during the first 5 or 6 weeks, I didn't see them at all because we just were worried. And my 95-year-old mother lives with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the 2 of us here now, but I have to be concerned about that. But it was just like trying to figure out what I could do to connect with them. And so I would go on to Zoom. I'd set up a Zoom meeting with my 2 daughters. And before the meeting occurred, I have this little basket that I put together with things that I dropped off on their doorsteps before our meeting, with like 4 or 5 art projects together. For instance, I have a bingo card here that I realized everybody can't have the same bingo card because you'll have the same bingos every time, right? But
Right.
we put a bingo card in, so we played bingo a few times together. We cut up the little squares and rearranged them on the sheet. I'm sure there are other ways that you can get that done, or just if you have a bingo game at home. We did that. So we played bingo. We'd all come in at the same time in the evening, and their mamas usually helped them. Or I put like little painting projects, or I would include, if we were painting rocks, I put in cleaned rocks and paint and the paint brushes and everything in there. So that all they had to do was open up the box when it was time. And I'd say, okay, you need to get out this piece of paper and this paintbrush and these paints, and, you know, set them down. And then one by one, we would say, okay, now you need to do this. And I would hold up how I did it, and then they would do it. And at the end of each project, we would take a snapshot of the screen, and then we would post that on Facebook, just showing each of our, like, it was right before Easter that we were doing this. And so of course we had a lot of cotton balls and pipe cleaners and bunny ears and that kind of a thing. And, you know, I didn't want to do it too long because they're little and their attention span isn't too great.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, you know, we'd plan something for 10 or 15 minutes, and sometimes they'd want to just color a little bit more. I mean, even if it's just coloring sheets or whatever that you're all doing together, it doesn't have to be any big deal. I mean, send them some scissors and some paper to cut up and, you know, put them in an envelope. I mean, there are all kinds of different things that you can do. But I put these little craft kits together, and they were always excited because they didn't really look at them until it was time to do the craft.
Nice.
I have a cat that just jumped up on my table. Hold on, go away. Go away. Anyway, and so it was a really fun way to get together and do stuff and feel like I was participating in their lives. So
lovely idea. I remember seeing the photo on Facebook of,
yeah.
I think it was rainbow with.
Oh, we made a rainbow. Yeah.
Rainbow.
It was a cloud with strips of like red, orange, yellow, blue, green that we, glued onto a half of a paper plate with, yeah. So, I mean, Pinterest, that kind of thing, if you can't come up with your own things, but it was really sweet and really fun. And I mean, you can do that with a 16-year-old, they might be the ones that come up with the craft, but
right,
it
exactly.
was fun and it was really nice and made them miss me even more. But,
oh, yes, but a great way to make that connection even over Zoom.
Yeah.
We've had a question come in. It says, do you have any recommendations on who should set up the Care Connection page?
I guess I would just say maybe the caregiver or a son or a daughter, somebody who is closely connected. Actually, anybody could set it up. Anybody who has if you can get on a computer and like go to Facebook or your mail or whatever, you can set one up. Anybody could set it up, but maybe somebody closer to you would be the one that would write out the initial description about what you want to say, but anybody can set it up. It doesn't have to be anybody personal because they just need an email address and maybe a photograph or two. They don't ask for they don't ask for your social security number or anything like that. So.
And I think you have a good point that it is easy. Both websites have videos that walk you through, kind of can give you little helpful hints, ideas on how to make it personal, things like that, so that you can make it your own. I have seen Care Connection coordinators be the spouse, the adult children, the best friend of the person living with ALS, the best friend of the caregiver. And I also had one where it was the sister of the person living with ALS in a Midwest state.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It just depends on who's that connection person for the family, who can be able to put those updates and make it work.
Yeah.
It really is a program that is there as kind of a safety net and a support. Once it's put in place, it can be so helpful to the family. The one thing I hear from caregivers and people with ALS sometimes is, we get a lot of phone calls asking, how am I? Sometimes that's hard to call back on. Being able to put a blog spot up and tell people what you're doing kind of changes in the focus to living with ALS.
And it also, I think, gave information to the families or the friends of yours who talk to other people, maybe those people who aren't really connected to you. It's like, oh, well, I read this, and they pass on the information. And I've got to say, we didn't have a lot of phone calls because people just knew about that. We had people who would call and say, we want to come for a visit. It's like, bring it on. That was right. What Paul's joy was. We had people who came out of the woodwork to visit, and that's really what floated his boat. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think I hope we've given you a good representation about what these things are all about, and good luck, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. I so appreciate you sharing your insight with us today, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Most of all, thank you for sharing about Paul and your family's journey with ALS. I think as we talk about it, it really helps caregivers feel supported too. I would like to just let everybody know that our next Facebook Live will be one of my favorite topics, and it's going to be on the copper ATSM. So this will be Thursday, June 25th from 3 to 4 p.m. We will have the latest update from Dr. Joseph Beckman at the Linus Pauling Institute at Oregon State University. He is the one doing the research on copper ATUSM, and we will have Dr. Peter Crouch at University of Melbourne at Victoria, Australia, join the Facebook Live to talk about his trial investigations that are going on live right now in Australia. So this is an exciting opportunity for people to learn more about it. So I look forward to having you all join us on June 25th for that next live Facebook. Thank you, Joyce, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Enjoy today, everyone.